Have you ever wondered how a box of old love letters could spark a love story set against the backdrop of World War I? What it really takes to balance history, faith, and romance on the page. In today's episode, you'll hear about perseverance, creativity, and the heart behind turning family stories into an unforgettable fiction. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Wandering Pen Podcast. I'm Christine Musser, your host. Welcome to episode 32. Today's podcast episode took place on Monday, August 25th, 2025. My guest is author Patti Stockdale. Patti is a Wisconsin-based author who writes sweet, hope-filled historical romances. Her work includes the World War I love story, Three Little Things, as well as contributions to the popular Bride Ship's New Voyages series. Patti has also written for magazines, educational assessments, and anthologies. With a background in creative writing from the Vermont College of Fine Arts, she combines history, heart, and happily ever after in her storytelling. When she isn't writing, she enjoys time with her family, sipping tea, and a little karaoke on the side. Welcome, Patti, to the Wandering Pen. I'm really thankful for you taking the time to be here with me on the podcast, and I'm really excited that you're here.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Chris. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so now I do want to say, Vermont, the year I started Vermont, which would have been 2002, you were actually, I think, graduating.
Could be. That sounds about right.
You were leaving and I was just coming in, but I learned about Vermont College through you because we had also previously worked together in banking.
Yeah.
So go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you first discovered your love for storytelling.
Sure. I was a little slow figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. My mom was a teacher and she'd always read to me, and I loved books. And when I was a junior in high school, I was to write a short story, and which was going to be about 5-6 pages, but mine ended up being 28, and I had to stop myself. But do you think I figured out that maybe I wanted to write for a living? No. Took a lot longer than that. When I was 35, I went back to college just to take general classes. I was living in Iowa at the time, and yeah, I loved it. I didn't care if I was writing a paper for my sociology class or something else. That was my favorite part, getting to do some writing. Mm-hmm. And then we moved to Pennsylvania, where I met you. And after a year, I started taking classes at the community college. And then I had enrolled in a community college creative writing class only because world history was canceled.
Okay.
So that's where I met Terry Wallace, who we both know, one of the instructors, and he kind of fostered my love for writing. So I went from there.
You've written across different formats, novels, magazine pieces, and educational content. What drew you specifically to historical romance?
It was not intentional at all. I thought I wanted to be a children's author. And I had taken, I think the first 2 semesters at Vermont College, I worked on a middle school novel that I had written and got that ready to publish if I could find a publisher. And then with the next semester, I needed another project. And at the same time, my mom and her sisters had found letters their parents exchanged during World War I. And so I thought, oh my gosh, that'll be a great project. And so I asked if I could borrow the letters, and they're like, no, we don't want that. They're very private. They thought it was a terrible idea. Mm-hmm. But they relented and they let me use the letters. So then that year I wrote that book, which changed tremendously over time, but that's
So,
why I wrote historical.
yeah, so whenever you said that the history class was canceled
Yeah.
at the community college, so you went to writing.
Yeah.
So why were you going to go into history?
I did not like history at all when I was in high school. And I was working full time at the bank, and I was taking classes at a satellite campus. So I didn't have to drive all the way into Harrisburg from Mechanicsburg. Because of my work schedule and my kids' schedule, I could only take classes 2 particular nights a week. And maybe it was Monday, Wednesday. And so the offerings were so slim. So I think the only 2 classes that were available, now that I think about it, it was World Civ or creative writing. And though creative writing sounded like more fun, I thought it might be more work and more time consuming. And I didn't know if I had the time to do it.
Oh, okay. So, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But that's how you ended up in writing historical romance then, because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So you studied creative writing at Vermont College of Fine Arts. How did that shape your voice as an author?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not 100% sure. I do feel that I had Ricky Gard Diamond as an instructor, and she probably influenced me some, though I don't write like her at all. But she was very encouraging to always dig deeper. Don't be a surface writer. If you're going to say, oh, she had food on the table, then say what food she had on the table. Be more specific, kind of thing. And then I remember with my first manuscript that I had at the college, it was called John's Middle Daughter. And it was about this girl who grew up on a farm. And I could relate to it. Not that I grew up on a farm. I lived in this very small farming community. And I was proud of it. I thought I'd, accomplished something that year. I got that done. And then when my small group critiqued it, I remember there was a lady from New York City, and she's like, "You're such a Pollyanna." And that really left an impact on me because I pretty much was.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to write a little grittier. I wanted to write my writing to be more relatable to a broader audience.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that influenced my voice.
Okay. So how do you balance history and romance in your stories so that both elements feel authentic and engaging?
Mm-hmm. My first book I wrote, or Three Little Things, I was a pantser, which for those who don't know is writing by the seat of your pants. I did not have an outline. Now, the next few books I've written, I've used an outline. And since I write for the inspirational market, I need to have romance thread. You have to see growth in the romance. I need to have a spiritual thread. How is the character different? And take that as religious or not religious. How has the character changed from the beginning to the story till the end of the story? And then there's the whole accuracy of telling a historical story. So it is a balancing act to make sure you hit all 3 of those things, because it's very important if you write historical to be authentic. So
Mm-hmm.
so easily fact checked.
Right. Right. So as a historian myself, I'm always curious about how people do their research and
Oh my goodness. Yeah. With my first book,
yeah.
with Three Little Things, I was intimidated to write about World War I. And I remember her name was Leslie. I can't think of her last Williams. Is that her name? Leslie Williams, I think. She was one of the instructors at Vermont. And she said, "Patty, you don't have to tell the overarching story of World War I. You just have to tell a really small piece of it through your hero's eyes."
Mm-hmm.
And that helped a lot. So I wrote that book, and then I put it on a shelf. We moved to Wisconsin at that point, and I needed it to start working again. And I started working at a nonprofit senior center. And the last thing I wanted to do when I got home was pull out that book and work on it. My husband got transferred to Iowa. We lived there maybe a year or two, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to dig that book back out. And I read it, and it seemed fine. It wasn't as engaging as I wanted it to be. And then I just dug really deep into the historical end of it. And, you know, I kind of dug in so deep that I think I was avoiding writing it or revising it. It's just like, I'm going to go down this rabbit hole and this rabbit hole and this rabbit hole. And I finally had to just stop. You know, it's just like, I could do this forever.
Yeah. So how did you balance the writing and the time? Like, how did you balance? Okay, so I got to stop going down this rabbit hole. I have to, I need to concentrate on the writing part and pulling this history into my story.
Yep. It was just discipline. You know, you just have to write so much. I kind of had the basics, and then we'd gone to the World War I museum in Kansas City. That's not that far from where we were living in Iowa. And then I could just kind of be real specific. I contacted another boot camp in Arkansas, and then I knew which boat Arno went over. Well, not for sure. I thought I knew what boat Arno went over, and then I contacted Liverpool to see if that matched up with the dates that how I was writing my story. So those things came later, but I just had to have enough information to, get the story down.
Okay. So do you start with the characters or the historical backdrop when writing?
Always the characters for me.
Okay.
Yeah. And I may not know who they are, but I know I have that little thread of what the story is going to be, or that premise. I worked that out first. That's the first step. And then I'm just working on one now. I do something that is like a plotting chart. It'll figure out what the person's identity is and why they have this identity. And then maybe what their moral center is. And then all these different things, like what's their flaw, what's their fear, all of that, maybe about 15 questions. And then I'll start using those things to do scene 1, chapter 1, scene 2, chapter 2. And so each one might be maybe 6 bullets for that scene. And then that helps me stay on track. So I jokingly say it took me 20 years to get Three Little Things published. Granted, I took a lot of time off in between, where now I can write a book much faster because I have this guideline.
Yeah. Well, I do want to go into Three Little Things, but when you were talking about your characters, it made me think of another question. Do you also build the appearance of the characters during that time?
Yeah, I do.
Personality and.
Yep, I do. I don't really do a character sheet per se, but this is just something I came up with on my own. It's like a particular book notes, and I'll list every character that's going to be in the book, and that changes as it goes. And then I'll have like a section about the heroine. Right now, my heroine's name is Katrina. So I'm jotting everything I know or I think I know about Katrina. And then I do the same thing with the hero. And then I do like, okay, this story's taking place in August, wherever my setting is, what's happening with the flowers, the fauna, all of those things. What's the temperature? And then I'll do the house where they're living and where they're working. And so I have all those notes. And I think for this story, I have about 18 pages of notes.
Mm-hmm.
So I get all of that accomplished before I start writing chapter 1.
Very cool.
Yeah, it works for me. For the next author, it wouldn't work for them. But
I think everybody's writing process is different.
Yeah. And you figure it out as time goes on, what's going to work and what's not.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's talk about Three Little Things.
Okay.
I love that title.
Okay, me too. Thank you.
Yeah. What sparked the idea for this World War I love story?
Mm-hmm. And it was finding those letters that my grandparents exchanged. And then part of that also was my grandpa had a really small little journal that he wrote things in. Not, more facts and statistics and like items they might have given him when he got there, dates he went to a new boot camp, address of somebody he wanted to stay in touch with after he got home, those sorts of things. But it helped. It helped tell the story. Though my book is fiction, it is completely based on my maternal grandparents. So I do follow exactly when Grandpa got on the train to leave his hometown and where he went every step of the way. I did speed up the end when he came home because that was right around 1919, which is, so the war ended in November 1918. I have him coming home in, I can't remember, December or January. And right in there was the Spanish flu. So one version of my book, I have my heroine getting the Spanish flu. So he survives the war, comes home and finds her with the Spanish flu. But that just made the story so long that I took it out.
Now, was that your choice that you did that, or was that the editor's choice?
No, that was my choice. I know I have 20 to 25 versions of the story. I knew exactly for historical romance how many words they basically wanted, and so I had to stay in that parameter.
Gotcha. Okay. Like you mentioned, the letters, you know, that with your family, within your family, and the novel is centered around that. What role do the letters and personal correspondence play in shaping your characters?
It's a lot. So his name is Arno, her name is Hattie. So when Arno leaves for the war, he and Hattie are neighbors. And they had been really good friends, and then they weren't anymore, and she couldn't figure out why. So she gave these women in town, every soldier that was leaving on the train, they gave them a pair of socks they knit, and there was a proverb inside. And so they bump into each other. She gives him his socks. They kind of talk a little bit, and then he leaves. And it's a little bit later, he said, you left me a message, so I thought I would send you a letter. And all the ladies in the community, that was one way they could support the soldiers. So it was not uncommon for one woman to maybe write letters to 10, 15 soldiers if she knew that many. So they started corresponding by letters because they were not on friendly terms initially. And that got to be a problem too, because if you're writing a romance, you need to have your characters on the page. So I had Hattie, she was in the area where the boot camp was, so she visited the boot camp with her friends and ran into him there. And then I had him come home on leave and those sorts of things. But it did bring them together also through the letters. That was one way to have them on the page together.
So one of the things is you mentioned Arno and Hattie. Are they the names of your family?
They are. They're my grandparents' names, but I changed in real life. My grandma's last name was Walz, very German, and I changed it to Waltz, Waltz, and my grandpa's last name is Kregel, and I changed it to Krieger because that's what my mom and her sisters wanted me to do.
Okay. It's really interesting because I had MJ Pettingill, who graduated with me in 2005, because she has done a series of historic novels of Etched in Granite series.
Okay.
And she did it on a cemetery a pauper cemetery that she found there in New Hampshire.
Oh, neat.
But it was a different kind of way where this was your family, where she ended up changing names. But she modeled some of the people from her ancestors.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So that's why I was wondering if you did the same. But yeah, really cool. But there's two different dynamics there, where yours is family and hers was not. Okay. What message or feeling do you hope readers take away from Three Little Things?
I was kind of surprised at the parallels to how the world is right now. It's very relevant because Arno faced discrimination because he was German. So he lived in a very German community, which in real life, I knew he lived, a lot of Iowa have the background, the heritage is German.
Mhm.
And that's an interesting dynamic. So he's fighting for America against German. And people, he had a German name. Arno was very German. And yeah, so I played up that part to make the story have more tension. Where if he actually faced that in real life, I don't know. But you see a lot of discrimination again nowadays. And I just thought, gosh, a lot of this is relevant.
Right. Which was very relevant then, the Germans in America that were some of them. I believe some of them, even they were imprisoned.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for if they couldn't speak German or something like that.
Oh, yeah. They had the Babel Proclamation that said they couldn't speak German, and that people would get, their businesses would they'd paint black over their business fronts, and they would tar and feather people. And I do have a scene in the book where somebody gets beat up. His name is Wilhelm, and he's a main character. And so it wasn't just amongst the other soldiers, and it was certainly on the home front too.
Yeah, and that was the sad part of being here,
Yeah.
in America. Okay, now we're going to move on to your Bride series
Okay.
that you contributed to.
Sure.
How did that collaboration come about?
I wrote the first book, had a small publisher who I actually sold the book through a Twitter pitch, which seems bizarre. I pitched it the first time in kind of these pitch fests where you have to condense what your book is about, and I forget how many characters you can use. And they do it like 3 or 4 times a year. I don't think they do it anymore. And then if an editor likes it, they'll give you a heart. So I think the first time I did it, I didn't get any. But then I read through how other people wrote theirs. And so I polished it up. And the next time it came around, I did it. And then I did get a couple of bites. And so when the one editor said, yeah, send me this, I did. And then she called me the next day and she said, we want to buy it. So that was really fun and exciting. But then I wrote a second book with that same time period, and I ended up getting an agent in there too. And that book didn't sell.
Oh.
And then my agent said, hey, have you written any contemporaries? And I'm like, no. And she said, well, I know somebody who works at Hallmark. So I wrote a contemporary, and they kept that book for a year. And then they're like, nope, we're not going to buy it. So I was getting kind of frustrated. Like, I don't even know what to do anymore. It's such a hard market to, get your foot in. And my agent said, we're not going to go back to that first publisher. I can't remember exactly why. I don't think they were making enough money that way. And so then I had a friend who got a contract with Sunrise Publishing, and I knew who the lady who ran Sunrise Publishing. She's somebody I respected, and her name is Susie Warren. And they were doing something really unique. They were matching very established authors with authors who were just getting started or hadn't even sold a book yet. So I didn't know if they'd consider me, but then I was on a phone call with a couple of friends, and they're like, hey, did you see Jody Hedlund is going to be, they're doing a historical one. Mm-hmm. And it's Jody Hedlund. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I have to lose if I just apply? So I applied, and it's just kind of crazy. I had been on a Zoom call with a different group of friends, and one of the ladies in there said, guess what? I made the top 10. I said, oh, that's so nice. And we chat a little while. And then when I get done, I look in my email and I don't have anything there. Well, later I went through my spam folder, and I had made the top 10. Wow. And I had a very limited amount of time to respond.
Oh, okay. Got to check those spam folders.
Yeah. So I had to write a specific scene, how I would handle something. And then I got a phone call from Jody, and she said, yep, we've narrowed it down to 5. And then, we had a really good phone call. I was driving down the road, and I had the phone ring, and I saw that it was from Michigan, and I knew she lived in Michigan. So I'm like, okay, I'm pulling over so I can focus on this phone call. And so we had a great call. And then maybe a couple of days later, I heard that she asked if I would write with her. So
very cool.
Yeah, it was a huge learning experience. It was almost like taking a master class, because she just poured herself into me. And That's the biggest growth I've had, was working with her. Granted, the book says Jody Helen presents Patti Stockdale, but it was worth it because, I have the support of her readers, and I had all of her knowledge. I don't know, what does she have, 50 books or something? So yeah, it was intense. She's quite the perfectionist, but it was worth it. It was good.
Very good. That is coming in with my next question here is, what's different about the writing in a series with another author compared to writing your own standalone story?
Yeah. She had this established series. I don't know when the books came out. There were 4 books the first time around, maybe around 2015. I'm not even sure. And so she knew she didn't want to stray too far from the setting and where these girls came from and their backgrounds. But I was able to come up with my storyline that there would be a treasure hunt and my characters and who they were and what they would do. And then I think I sent 3 premises, and the publishing company and Jody liked this one best. And then we're like, okay, now we have to figure out how to tie our 2 stories together. So there's a thread. And we got contracts for books 3 and 4. So then we needed another thread to tie 3 and 4 together. And then all 4 of the girls, 3 of the girls came over together on the bride ship, and they were friends. So it was fun to see their story. And then the girl in book 3 was a sister to Jody's first character. In the beginning, with the first book, I would write, even a chapter, send it to her, and then she'd give me some feedback to make sure I was on the right track. So
okay. The 2 of you wrote parallel then?
No, she wrote her books and I wrote my books, but she was my main editor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And we would brainstorm together, and we're still friends, I still talk to her, and she's great.
Well, how long did that take? What was the time frame of that?
Usually it takes a book from when you start writing it to when it gets published about a year. That process, let's see, I think I got the contract maybe in August, and then 18 months later, maybe 20 months later, the book came out. And then the next book went super fast. I got the contract in September, and I had to turn it in at the end of January.
Keeps you stepping.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. You once worked for a professional football team.
I did.
And even had a funny mix-up answering phones. Moments like that find their way into your writing?
Yeah, I think my biggest compliment I can get is if somebody says, "Oh, I liked your humor in that." And that makes me smile, because I like to read books that make me smile. So I do try to play that up quite a bit. But that particular incident didn't. But now that you say that, I'm writing a book and my hero is a professional athlete. So maybe something like that can work in.
There you go. But Patti, knowing you personally, you've always had a great sense of humor.
Oh,
and a great laugh.
Oh, thank you.
You're very positive. You're a glass half full person.
Well, thank you.
Totally.
That's sweet.
So, but making people laugh or chuckle in a book is not easy.
No. And what I think is funny, the next person may not.
Okay.
I've had edits before where the editor will say in the comment, like, "I don't get this." Like, okay, that didn't go over well. So yeah.
Interesting. I mean, is that kind of like, well, yeah, it has. I mean, I'm going to say it does, but I mean, I don't know. It seems to come natural for you to do that because of your life and everything.
I can say by far I'm the least funny person in my family.
Wow. Okay.
So I'm surrounded by silly, crazy people. So
yeah. Hey, that's what keeps us going, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your daily writing routine? And do you have any rituals besides tea?
I have my tea right here.
Yeah.
For a long time, I would light a scented candle. Like if I start a book, I'm going to get a new candle, and then a little while later, I'll get another candle. I've kind of stopped doing that because I just saw those fragrant candles aren't necessarily good for you, but I am very disciplined. I don't know if it's because of my age. I'm not quite sure, but I write, if I'm home, I write 7 days a week. I write, usually start by 6 or 7. I try to quit writing by 5 or 6 because I can't sleep if I go to bed, because then the story's too in my head and I can't turn it off.
Mhm.
So I moved my mom here from Iowa last fall. So I get out a little more than I used to. But with winter coming, I'll get back into my routine again.
Now, do you take? I'm thinking you take breaks.
I
Snack
do.
breaks, lunch breaks.
Yep, I have some back issues. So I look at my clock, and when it's on the hour, I try to get up. I strive for 10,000 steps a day. So
Okay.
that just makes my back feel better.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Yeah. I try to stay off social media unless I'm walking.
Yeah. It can really take away from the whole writing, or
Yeah.
takes away from the whole creative process.
Yep.
So does AI.
Oh yeah. I haven't experimented with that much yet, but yeah.
It's crazy, but anyway.
Yeah.
So, as someone who's experienced rejection but keeps going, what advice would you give aspiring authors who are still chasing that first yes?
Yeah. When I was at Vermont College, it was the year I had Ricky Gard Diamond, and we either had to interview somebody. I can't remember what our other options were. And at that time, I was writing children's literature or writing for middle grade. And she said, "Hey, I know Catherine Patterson." And I'm like, "I love Bridge to Terabithia." And she said, "Why don't, if you want to, you can call her, and, don't have a crazy long phone call or anything, but I bet she'd be willing to talk to you." So I called her, we set up a time, and then I called at that time, had my 5 questions or whatever. I don't even know. Maybe I had 10. And she answered the phone, and I could tell she was probably washing dishes. And then she said, "Hey, this isn't going to be too long, is it?" I'll scratch that, I'll scratch that, I'll scratch that. But then I asked her for a piece of writing advice. And she said, "The key to succeeding in this business is perseverance." She said, "It is not the best authors that get writing contracts. It's the ones that persevere, because you're going to just face rejection after rejection. It's just part of the process. It hurts your feelings sometimes. And it's just like, oh, this is a waste of time. Why do I keep doing this?" I felt that way for years. In fact, I almost gave up at one point. And she said, "I'll never forget it. Just persevere." So whenever anybody asks me for writing advice, that's what I give them, because I think it's true. I've known some fabulous writers, but for one reason or another, they don't get that book contract. Maybe what they write just isn't in vogue right now, or maybe the publisher just bought something that's similar. There are so many reasons, and it's the publishing industry is so slow usually to get those contracts and make it work. I don't know. It's a tough business to get your foot in the door. So many authors I know, they go to a writing conference, and then they meet somebody, maybe somebody they admire, and then they start a relationship with that person, and then that person might help them, give them advice, or even look at their work, or even contact their agent and say, "Hey, I'd like to recommend this person. She's a really good, or he's a really good author." And that's how they get their foot in the door.
Yeah, I know you had brought up Terry Wallace earlier, and I know one of the things we had those, I think maybe you didn't do that. I did an independent study class with him. And that was one of the things he said. Christine says, the way you do that is through perseverance. That's how you, that consistency, you just keep it rolling.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. And looking ahead, can you give us a peek as what you're currently working on and what readers can look forward to.
Yeah. So I've researched and done a little legwork on a historical series that I'd like to write, but it's hard to get your foot in the door with a publisher unless you have an agent. I don't have I terminated my agent because I didn't need her anymore because I was able to get this contract with Sunrise on my own. And we talked it through and we're still friends. It's all good. But as long as I'm writing for Sunrise, I don't need an agent because an agent takes a big portion of your income. So we parted ways amicably, but so I finished the 2 Brideship books, and then they decided they were going to take a break with historical books for a little while. And I'm like, nah, what am I going to do? So I knew one of the editors, and I had sent her a message and said, hey, I'm up for anything. I've actually written a contemporary before, not that it's sold, but I'm willing to write that if you have anything for me. And it didn't take her very long to write back. And she said, actually, we're doing a new series and somebody had to drop out. And that's book 6 in season 2 of this series. Would you, we already kind of have a premise written for it because it's about 7 siblings, their family. And would you want to do that? And I'm like, if they want to give me a contract, I will write that book. So I just finished, I turned that in the end of April. And I just sent in my edits earlier this morning. So now I'll wait back for another edit. But I also got a contract for season 3 of that same series. And so I have written, I'm not quite sure, maybe 5 chapters, and it's due in early December. And then I was invited to do another series with them, and I'll start writing that book in December. So I'm at that point in my life, this is a 2nd or 3rd career for me. It's just like, if people want to give me contracts, I'm going to keep writing them. But it's so intense a little bit right now. It's a blessing to have 3 contracts that are open, but it's also can be a burden because you might work more than you want to. I'm lucky that I have a really supportive husband and I don't do a lot. My social life is very dismal. So I have time on my hands and I'm enjoying it. And once I stop enjoying it, I'll quit doing it. But I might take a break when that 3rd book is due. I think it's somewhere like April. And then work on my historical, because then I'll just work at my own pace. I won't have all of these deadlines I'm trying to juggle. So
yeah. Plus, you're taking care of your mom, you said.
Yeah, but she's so independent. So.
Oh well, then.
Right, she doesn't drive though. But yeah.
Oh, but still, yeah, but that's good. Okay. You describe yourself as writing stories about hope, history, and happily ever after. Why is hope such an important thread in your work?
When I was a little girl, I grew up in this really small community, and church was huge in that community. But my little family didn't go to church because my parents grew up believing different things. And so they still had faith, but we didn't actively go to church. And so just like, I feel like I'm missing something. So about the time I was a teenager, my faith started to develop, but it was slow to mature. But that faith that is in my core is more important than anything else. So I wanted to write for the inspirational market because that's just a reflection of who I am. I would be open to writing, in the secular or general market too, but I just haven't explored it at this point because I was able to get my foot in the door, and I like the people that I've met, and we still hold different beliefs in many ways. I do, from the people that I'm in contact with lots of times. But for me, it's more personal, my relationship,
Mm-hmm.
my faith. And so what I write is just an expression of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Without faith, we couldn't do anything, in my opinion, you know?
In our opinions, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's,
Yeah, that's got me where I am. So
yeah. Yeah. Okay. So if you could sit down with any historical figure over a cup of tea,
mm,
who would it be and what would you ask them?
how historical is this figure?
Oh, either fiction or nonfiction, whatever you want to take there, whoever.
Okay, I would probably sit down with Jane Austen because I'm a big fan of her work. I love all of her books and the shows and the movies. And yeah, I just like to pick her brain about, I think she was pretty bold, what she wrote as a woman in the early 1800s. And yeah, she'd be
Yeah,
my pick.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, where can listeners find your books and connect with you online?
Yeah, you can find me on Amazon. I'm at Barnes and Noble. I'm probably on Thrift Books. If you want to get a secondhand book, my publisher, Sunrise Publishing. If you Google me, you can find, where you can get the books. They're most any place you go to buy your books, you can probably get it there. I would assume. I don't know.
Yeah, are there any audio versions? Not yet.
No. His Treasure Bride is out in hardbound now,
Okay.
but I do think the contemporaries I'm working on will be audio.
Okay. Alrighty. Okay. Well, thank you, Patti, so much for joining us here today and for sharing with us about your writing, your love of history, and the hope you weave into your writing and the inspiration behind your books. And to the listeners, thank you for taking the time to be here to listen to Patti as she shares her wonderful journey through writing her book. Be sure to check out Patti's novel, Three Little Things, and her other work. No doubt you will find them inspirational. And as always, thank you for spending this time here with the Wandering Pen podcast. Don't forget to click on the follow button so you don't miss an episode, and share today's podcast. Until next time, keep listening, keep reading, and keep exploring the stories that connect us all.